Oh, so live. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I'll just try one. No, I've done this one before. So this is kind of like, well, I guess, yeah, it's kind of like FYZ with yeah, a little Belgian FYZ and then like a little hockier than that. Oh yeah, maybe. Oh, that's fair. Oh, really? Yeah. Back in the year or something. And then it goes inside this like Curie thing. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Hi there. How you doing?
The problem is you buy something on there, people see they get funded from other big companies. They make fun of those, and they're like, and then they're like, by the time you get your thing, like someone else already has something better.
Good question for you. Yeah. I have a couple of my students working on some project and they start using Angular. Okay. So we've been just testing it in Chrome and Firefox, and when we get to IE, it totally does not show up any of the, like all the Angular codes that are showing up in the field. Is there like something special you need to do for IE to make it so that it doesn't seem like it loaded Java, the Angular.
What version of IE?
11, we have 9 and 11, they both have the Angular smiley face stuff just start showing up on the page.
I'm not sure. We're only supporting Firefox, so I don't know a ton about.
I mean, I got an app that's running on IE8.
It's supposed to be. I know it's supposed to be compatible with IE8.
Right. They're gonna have you just implemented what they say for IE8 anyway?
No.
I would just implement whatever they're saying for IE8 because I know. Okay. And maybe that'll fix whatever's wrong with
I was reading some of the stuff up today, but I have not put in there to see if it make a difference in that. But it's just that. It's like you use an IE, you load up the same page. It doesn't seem like IE is loading the JavaScript up correctly. So
you look at I know IE's developer tools aren't great, but you can sometimes see console output.
They're pretty good.
Is it?
Yeah. Okay. They're badass these days. I mean, I still have a problem, but because I got a client who's still on IE8, that I'm still going to camp out in IE a little bit.
Yeah. For the most part of it's internal on the administrative side. We can have people in our department just use IE and not IE but Firefox. But when a customer comes and look at the view, they could be in any browser. Yeah, can't really tell what to use. So
I would implement what they say for IE8. If it still doesn't work, maybe it's just something where IE11 is like one of your scripts is being interpreted wrongly or something.
All right.
And it's not like an Angular thing. It's more of a
JavaScript thing.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. It's not loading up, so it can't even get there to the Angular stuff. So
like the MIME type might be wrong on the script file or something.
Right. Still on.
I'm sorry I couldn't be more helpful. Good for Randall, he's here. Yeah, I mean our app is internal and we can just say use Firefox.
Yeah.
Hi. Are you Steven? What's up? I'm Will. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Your stuff can go right here, but you don't have to do it just yet. Announcements and lightning talks if there are any. Oh yeah, no. Info is there. It's also in front of you, I guess. It's from the welcome doc over there. And I have dongles for Mac. But we have an HDMI and VGA. Okay. Sweet. Yep. Yeah, it's a nice space. It's a little tight for the meetup, but we do what we can. Yeah. Yeah, it is. And like, you know, we can't get power strips to all the seats in general, so. And yeah, especially getting laptops in seats where we have to pack the seats a little close together here. Sorry? Restrooms are near the kitchen. Yeah. Fortunately, the webcam did not agree with me today, so John's got to be cameraman today. But we're still up. Yeah. Sorry? Oh, you are? With Lloyd and what's the other guy's name? Yeah.
Started doing live streaming.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can show you.
Give the speaker a Bluetooth. And then you plug that in. Then you have them join the Hangouts and share their slides.
Yeah. Do you want to do that? I can invite you to it. We haven't done that yet, but I'm happy to. What's your plus name? I might need your like full address. It's not letting me do it. What's your like Gmail address? Steven.fluin at what? At Gmail? Okay, see if that works. It always feels like a bit of a runaround getting people to join a hangout. And oh yeah, it's butter. Like I love using it with people I'm connected with and can, you know, get it hooked up with. But, sure.
For developers in like 3 months. I had to give
Got that work too. Yep, it's working good.
A lot, but this not.
My company built
Getting that direct. We don't work together, so we don't. That's funny.
You guys talking about Target? Yeah, I just saw something go across tech or tech.mn for some search engineering role. And like they don't got money. Sorry to cut the conversation, everybody, but we gotta get started. It's a little after 7 now, so we'll get it going. Hi, in case you hadn't met me already, my name's Will. Along with some of the people at Virtual Well here, we host this Angular event every month on the first Wednesday. Hopefully you got some beer and pizza in the kitchen. If not, feel free to sneak out the back and get some more. Usually how these things go is we kind of go through thanking our sponsors and just other announcements, and then do some lightning talks, have a presenter, and give out some prizes. So, OPI Object Partners for giving us the pizza and beer tonight. They're a consulting firm over in Minneapolis. Pretty cool guys. We hired some of them. Anyone hiring or looking for work that wants to shout it out? Yes.
I am looking for work. I just pulled off an Angular project I put on those on Friday last week, and I'd love to do anything Angular. If anyone I have business cards and handle, if you want to forward me recruiter emails, I already shared. I'll deal with it.
And your name is?
Michael Maddox.
Michael Maddox.
Yep.
Thank you, Michael. Yes.
I'm also looking for work.
Okay. And your name is?
Ben Jordan.
Ben Jordan. Okay. Anybody else? Anyone else you hired?
In October.
Huh?
In October.
In October. Dale will be looking for work in October. A heads up that we don't have any presenters after this, so if you would like to present at these things, it's really not a huge deal. Kind of cool, kind of fun, get yourself out there. Next month, Zach and I are thinking about presenting our Midwest JS talk. If you don't know what Midwest JS is, it's a new conference that they're doing on the St. Thomas campus in Minneapolis, August 14th and 15th. So check it out, MidwestJS.com. There's a ton of cool speakers here. I think John's doing a talk there. Is anybody else doing a talk there?
Intro to
Yeah. Probably not for this crowd.
That's why I didn't do it here.
Anybody else have any other announcements or cool stuff they want to talk about? No? Okay. We usually reserve this next bit here for any lightning talks. If you want to just come up and show something cool that you've been doing, it doesn't have to be really a thing, just like a couple of minutes, like an open mic kind of thing. So does anybody have something they wanted to show off, something cool they're doing? Nope. All right. Cool. Well, then we'll just get started early with Steven then.
Oh, yep. There you go. Hopefully. Maybe. There we go. I have to admit I am not an expert on the AV in this room.
Right. You're in tech, so you're automatically an expert in
I'm
everything.
automatically the guy to do it.
I've been in so many meetings where they're like, Steven, you do this up? Yes, probably. All right, so I'm here to talk about my experiences with Angular and a technology that's relatively new called Chrome Cordova apps. How many people here have heard of Chrome Cordova apps? Okay, what about a few more hands out? Cordova at all? Okay, good. Are you guys using Cordova? Are you just interested in it, heard about it?
Heard about it, interested in it.
Okay, okay. Well, hopefully I'll be able to kind of provide an entry point for that. Just a little bit about the company I work for. I work for a company called MentorMate. So we imagine, design, and deliver mobile and web applications. So basically, if clients come to us and they say, hey, I've got a great idea. I want something to do X. So whether that company is Thomson Reuters or a new startup. And then we say, yeah, we can help. We'll put a team on that. We'll figure out what the product should do. We'll figure out how it should be built. Angular, of course. And then we'll go and build it. So right now we are hiring. So if you gentlemen want to see me after, let me know. A little bit about myself. So I'm Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer for MentorMate. So I've actually been there 13 years now, which is a really long time in the tech space. I was basically employee number 1 back in 2001 when we were founded. And I've been with the company the whole time, so it's been kind of fun to see us grow. So we're at about 220, 230 people now. So I worked on projects, everything from kind of 600 plus different projects in kind of web applications, mobile applications, et cetera. Everything from start to the Fortune 500s. And the reason that's important is because what I do during the day, every day, is figure out, okay, how can we leverage these new technologies? How do we kind of map and navigate this new space? Because as we all know, technology is expanding exponentially, right? So we're Angular users here, but should we be using Angular and Polymer, or Angular and X, right? So, and then there's going to be more and more layers as we go on. So part of my day job is really understanding and navigating those. And then I kind of go home and I code. So that's what I do. A little bit about why Angular, why mobile. I'll kind of skip Angular. This group kind of understands that. I mean, great. The caveat that I've only built personally 3 or 4 applications in Angular. So some of you are probably better experts in Angular than I am, and you'll probably see me make mistakes. Feel free to call them out and educate the group. But why mobile? So I think it's almost pretty clear. I hope it's pretty clear to everyone in this room that if you don't have some sort of mobile interface, you're kind of failing at this point. But historically, we've had this problem with discovery, right? If you build a standard Angular application and try and distribute it to your users, well, you're there's a whole other world that's risen in terms of native mobile applications. What I mean by native mobile applications is just the fact that they're in the App Store. There are entire classes of people, most of them under 25, that don't know how to search on the web. They just go to their social, either ask a friend, or they go to the App Store and they look for an application. So being able to build applications that work on mobile devices, such as iPhones, Android phones, is very important. Let me know if I need to go into that anymore. I'm a big fan of mobile. Skill requirements. So just in terms of some of my expectations, so this is not an introduction to Angular. I'll talk about a couple of the kind of concepts that I'm relying on. So I hope some of you guys have some Angular experience. The other piece, I'll do some talking about NPM to get access to some of these tools. So if you need anything with Node, let me know after. As well as I have some expectations that you know about some of the Google APIs and things like that, which I'll kind of touch on and show you how to navigate that space. So I'm here to talk about Chrome Cordova apps, which are also known as CCA, and then they've also got a name in the GitHub. This is a way, so most of you have heard of Cordova, which is a way of running JavaScript through a harness that's being deployed natively by the kind of C library, as well as kind of native libraries being built for mobile platforms. Cordova touches all sorts of mobile platforms, everything from Tizen to iOS, Android, and beyond. This is actually a narrowing of that focus now. So what Google has done, and several Google developers, which I'll talk about in a second, they've taken the idea of Cordova in order to implement the Chrome APIs. So how many people have built a packaged Chrome app or a Chrome extension? So a couple people. So the reason you would want to do that is because it's a way, it's a mechanism for distribution. So if you have an application, such as an Angular application, you can actually package that as a Chrome app and then run it offline, which is a very cool way. You can charge for that application. You can manage the version automatically. So anytime a user is accessing your application, it's being kept up to date by the browser, and it's being managed for you. The other nice thing about it is that it also allows you to, with this new set of extensions, use that same application, that same code base, and bring it down to mobile with virtually kind of no development cost. So these are kind of 3 of the guys on the team. So this is a team in Canada, so in Montreal. Their vision for Chrome Cordova apps is we've got this kind of challenge with the Google technologies, right? You've got Chrome and you've got Android. It's always just, okay, how do I build to target both of these? And while Google's trying to do a lot of things, so for example, I think at Google I/O they announced that Android applications are coming to Chromebooks. The other direction is a little bit tougher. And so they're actually not even sure how we're going to end up building applications in 5 years or how you're going to deploy these things. But their thought is, hey, let's explore, let's try and build something that makes it easier to develop and easier to launch these applications. This is a relatively recent project. So this is the first release, the 0.001 on January 23rd of this year. And then the most recent release is, I think, 0.11 or 0.1.1. So this is still a beta technology, but it is, as of today, suitable for building and launching applications, in my opinion. The other nice thing is that it's being built against existing APIs. So this isn't necessarily a project where you're going to have to go rebuild your entire application in 6 months, because it's using APIs that already exist in Chrome and already exist as part of that whole application development process, which has hundreds of thousands of apps in there. The most important URL that I'm going to use today, this is a short link I created. This is the URL for the GitHub repository. So if you search for Chrome Cordova app or mobile Chrome, Google should be the top result, or it's just bit.ly Angular CCA. This website does, it talks about what Chrome Cordova apps are, how to build them. It's got a really simple tutorial, which I'll touch on several parts of it. And then it's also have been implemented, what APIs have not been implemented. So that's very helpful. There's a couple dependencies, and I want to talk a little bit about the build chain. So when you build a Chrome Cordova application with Angular, first you need Node.js, you need the Node package manager, because that's how they distribute the app. You can't actually download an executable or zip. So you have to use any. What you'll do is CCA will be used to create your project. And then from there, you'll be working in pure kind of HTML, JavaScript, CSS using Angular. And then you'll use CCA as the tool to build and deploy that application. So using CCA, you'll actually be able to wrap and execute using Cordova that application into an APK for Android or an APK for iOS. So getting started, so CCA, if you don't have Xcode installed and you're using a Mac, they will require the Android SDK. It's kind of one or the other. And you'll need to have Java installed. So even though we're not writing our application in Java, it needs that layer to do the translation to Android, for example. And then it's relatively simple. You just run the command CCA create, and then the name of your project. And what that's actually going to do is that's going to create a scaffolding for you. And there's several important files. So there'll be the standard Cordova folders, such as platforms, such as plugins. But this www folder is probably the most important. So what they do is they create a scaffolding of a www folder, which contains all of the code of your application, as well as several manifest files that say, okay, start here. And then I've also called out two of the kind of most important files from my perspective. Background.js. So this is the first line of code that gets run when you run your application. So if I'm on mobile and I click on the app icon, or if I'm on a browser and I click on the icon in my little launcher tray, whatever they call that, it's going to run background.js, which is then going to in turn trigger index.html. And so when we're talking about building this application, index.html is going to be your standard starting single page application. So that's where you'll do all your includes of Angular routes, all those sorts of things, as well as all your controllers, all your services. That will all be included right there. Chrome, the reason to use Chrome Cordova apps instead of just pure Cordova is because they give you several APIs, which personally I find very helpful. So it's got a more robust system for alarms. And so one of the nice things is when you're talking about building an application on phones, using an alarm system that can be grouped, not waking up the device, consuming power, things like that. You get Google Cloud messaging, at least on Android, so you can accept push notifications by your application. What happen is your application will actually, it doesn't need to be running, it can be asleep. The platform and the runner from Cordova will actually wake up your background.js application and pass it an event saying cloud notification received. And then you have to then pass that back into the data model or push a notification or do whatever you want with that so that when your user launches the application, everything's up to date. Internationalization, which is nice. Probably my #1 piece is identity. So in Android, one of the cool features is you always need to pick your user, right? You can just sign in. I don't have to enter a username. I don't have to enter a password. And the same is true with the Chrome Web Store. So using their identity API, you basically say get auth token, and it'll ask the user either interactively or non-interactively which account they want to be using, and then you'll get back a token that you can use to look up their email address, look up their password, or not password, so name, email address. You can ask for additional permissions, but you can ask for access to their social graph. You can ask for access to their age or zip code. What was that? Oh, sorry. Feel free to make it a little bit more conversational, guys. I feel like a couple of you may be lost. So if I'm going too fast, feel free to slow me down. Or is this all easy and you guys know it already?
So far, so good.
Okay. Socket communication. So this is kind of one of the more novel APIs in the HTML5 spec. So doing a UDP, TCP socket communication, as well as WebSockets. The Chrome storage API, which is there, so you can actually automatically sync a user's profile data between both their mobile application and their web application, which is kind of cool. I haven't found a use case for it, but the idea that without even building any of my own cloud storage, I can store a file or store a preference and then synchronize that across devices. And I don't have to do anything. That's pretty cool, as well as licensing. So I talked about when you launch this application in the Chrome Web Store or in iOS, the App Store, or on Google Play, you can actually charge for it. And so they give you the licensing library. So you can say, hey, did this user pay for it? When did they pay for it? And then take that and pass that back up to a server. Any questions on some of the APIs? So there's a lot of notable APIs that are missing. So there's no Bluetooth access yet, although it's in their roadmap. There's notifications in Google Cloud Messaging are only on Android, which is unfortunate for now. Any other? Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe I just missed it, but so this will work with normal Cordova platform stuff. This as well, or like
So
if I make an app with this, who can use it? Or like, can I make an app and it actually it'll show up on here? Limited effort, or
sure. So if you make a pure Cordova application,
yep.
you can 100% use this.
Okay.
And then it'll work on Android, iOS.
Gotcha.
Because you're just basically including a bunch of plugins to Cordova that you're not using.
This is a little more specialized.
Yeah, this just gives you additional tools that will make it faster to develop applications.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks.
Do you know if there's a size limit for the storage?
Sync is something like 1 KB. No. Yeah, that sounds right. It's like 5 KB, something ridiculously small.
Okay.
I think it's so this isn't implemented yet. That's why it's 1 KB. In the latest Canary build of Chrome, they have actually a property where you can request more, and then that ends up getting flagged as a permission.
Okay.
So, and then there's also local storage, which has the standard. I store images in there, and then you also have access to the file system. So I didn't even include that here because it's kind of an assumption. It doesn't actually work that well. I recommend use the Cordova file system functions, not the Chrome ones. All right, so I want to talk through, so you guys are all aware of how to build an Angular application. But when you want to build an Angular application that works on Chrome and mobile, you actually have to think about a few things a little bit differently. So the first one that I want to talk about is mobile UX. When you build an Angular application or a web application for mobile, it's not necessarily going to look like a mobile application. And that's actually a big problem for users. I think a couple months ago I saw you guys had an Ionic guy come over here and talk.
Yep.
How many
We have a
saw
couple
that?
stickers too.
Did everyone see that, or just a couple of you?
I was here.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know, Ionic is a framework built on top of Cordova. So it's Cordova and then Chrome apps and then Ionic that is intended to give you a set of UI elements. It's still tried using it, and I found it was a little bit buggy for what I was trying to do, and it didn't give me any. Do one-tap sign-in. I'd say it's not hard to build your own, but I would definitely recommend you get a designer, or use something, one of these kind of best-of-practice frameworks like Bootstrap, or now there's the Google Starter Kit, or whatever they call that. This is also alleviated by a couple things. So if anyone watched the Google I/O keynote, one of the huge announcements there was this idea of material design. So Google's trying to build a single design language that works across web, tablet, mobile. Basically just an extension of what Apple did in iOS 7 and iOS 8. But then what they've done is they've actually built, using Polymer, a set of HTML tags and kind of pre-configured components that you can use in your application to get that same look. So theoretically, within a year, all of the Android applications, I'd say all of them very facetiously because there's like a billion of them, will start looking the same as a web page, which is nice for us because then we can use HTML5 that makes it more viable to build an application that looks native and feels native. So they've got this whole idea of paper. So if you use the paper dash input box, then it's got all sorts of cool functions, like when you tap, the placeholder text will slide up above it and things like that. As well as they've got a lot of animations. So
Angular UI today, this is a release that they're supporting material design already. So if you go to the page on the GitHub, it would essentially go beta link where a lot of like the ripple effects and stuff are already working with Angular UI.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
I was
G+ today. So.
I was just finding and using the Polymer library to automatically get those. But if Angular supports it, all the same company, I think they would talk, but they don't. All right, the second major headache that you're going to have to deal with is the content security policy, the CSP. So this is a big, giant security framework that's designed to make web applications more like native applications and down into this security model. So it's relatively easy in Angular to conform with those rules. So you directive at the top. So if you have a standard A link with a reference or even a sub-page reference, it won't work. So if I try and link to index.html from within my application, it'll say, not allowed to change pages between there. You can't load remote resources from HTML. But you can't load it from HTML. So I can't just take an image, swap out the source attribute with something else, and have the image show up. You can't inject, so it's that same idea, you can't inject images or scripts. So all of it has to be in a .js file. So your index.html, it actually can't include any inline dots. The exception of the kind of little stuff that you squeeze into attributes. That's a little bit annoying. So, for example, one of the things I'll get into is this idea of a top bar and how you manage state. And then you have to separate your HTML and JavaScript. So, as I said, so I talked about this idea that you can actually link between files. So, how do you do the page transitions? Angular has this kind of built in using the view model. And then what I do is I create a navigation service. So every controller in my Angular application, I pass in the navigate service, and then I just use navigate.goto. And I'll show you some source code I wrote for that makes that relatively simple. The other thing that I'll show you here, this is an application I built and launched in the App Store. Everything from here to here that looks like the standard Android action bar, that is one controller for me. And then everything below is a view. And then what I've done is I've actually made this view swap out, and then it's able to change the state of the action bar. So for example, one of the things that you want to do is change what the text is written in the action. Hey, what page am I on? So that they know where they are in the hierarchy. So when I'm in a controller, I just say, hey, navigate.topbar text equals this. And then I have the top bar controller watching that and then update its own state.
So that's something they don't roll their own, like you have to roll your own navigation service. Or that's something they...
I rolled my own. There may be a better way, and I think you guys will probably be the experts to figure it out. But I just rolled my own. So for me, it's like 23 lines of code, but I threw in all sorts of debugging and analytics and things like that. And I'll actually show some of that source code here. So here's kind of the layout that I use. So I use an H1 with its own dedicated controller, and then I've got an ng view where I use Angular routes so that I pass it go-to / scan or / home or / login, and then I use that to process where the user should be within the application hierarchy. So I apologize if this is too small. I'll post this after you guys can post it. So here's 2 example methods that I wrote. So go-to. Not the terrible one, though. Hopefully a nicer one.
You don't want to call that.
You got a better name? Go.
You own it, dude.
So if destination is blank, I go home, I don't want users logging in or going back to the login screen, which is where I default. I say location, which is a standard Angular service. What's it called? I don't know. Angular or location.path, and then I just path to the path. And then you'll see I reset the tools. So my action bar, I'm just resetting the state so that the individual controller can set up that state. And then I'm also using an analytics service that I built that's another 4-line wrapper to actually send a view. So I'm a little bit anal. I really like the idea of knowing every click that a user makes in my application so that I can map that path out and watch attrition and bounce rate and things like that. So I just built it into my function here, which is nicer than even a interpage link because you wouldn't be able to do that same level of tracking. I also built a quit function because that's not necessarily trivial, or it is trivial, but it's not automatic. So I'm checking to see if I'm in a Cordova application. If I am, then I'm using that exit app function. So that's if going to be running on mobile. Otherwise, if I'm in Chrome, then I'm using a different quit function. So that's just the idea. So on Android, when you hit back from the home screen where there's no more hierarchy, you should quit and not just stay there, which is a little bit different from a web page, right? A web page, you just keep clicking the upper left-hand corner on the breadcrumb, and then you can't go back any further. One of the challenges with this idea is the network stack. So every launch of your application, your entire Angular cache gets reloaded. So it's the equivalent of someone on their browser hitting the refresh button. All of your memory gets flushed, and then you kind of have to reload things. So I have a little kind of 3-step. Whenever I need data, first I kick off a network call. And then what that network call does is when it succeeds, it updates memory and disk. But because when you have to kind of think a little bit mobile, because your request may not come back at all, or it might come back and say, hey, did we load this before during this execution? And I just pull it out of a direct Angular cache. And if it's not there, then I go and I check that local storage, which is actually technically the disk of your phone or your computer. So this kind of 3-piece thing ensures that I get data on the screen as soon as possible if I have it anywhere. And then second, that as soon as those network calls come back, it updates. And so one of the nice things about kind of auto-binding in Angular is by updating that same object by the network stack, everything will just refresh, right? So I load the screen, maybe I load 5 items from a list that I get from a JSON web service, and then as soon as the network calls comes back and there's 7 and 2 are deleted, it updates itself. I don't really have to do anything. So that's the magic of Angular.
I'm going to ask you a question on that. So how do you have that structured? For example, I was looking at a similar problem, and I was wondering, okay, do I have like a service, and then that service looks at a cache, and then it calls the network? Do you have any details on kind of how you structure that from?
Sure. And I can pull up some code after if you want to, but originally I wrote it so that every screen would load its own data, but I found that was really inefficient because users flip back and forth all the time. So what I actually ended up doing is I had my home screen load everything. Because the applications that I built, they only download probably at most 100 KB of data from 6 web services. So I mean, I'm making a few network calls, but then I load that all on my home screen into a single data structure and then use that throughout the application.
Do you look at refresh or?
Do you do it through like a service? Do you inject a service into your control?
Yeah. So I call it like offline tool. That's the name of my service, and then I call offline tool.refresh to initiate the cache or to update and make sure to force that refresh, and then everything else accesses offline tool.data. But once again, this is a kind of a home-based solution. You guys might have a better thought for that than I do. But you had a question as well? No?
No. But you're only calling it once, and when you go back to home, they'll just stop doing it again.
I do it whenever they modify data. So what I do is I force a full fetch from the internet because there's some weird edge cases where if you have nested data structures and you update the middle of the nest or the bottom, I mean you want to pull that through. And I could have built something smart to go and do that myself, but I'm like, no.
So it's not a write through cache. It it.
No.
As soon as it marks dirty, it rereads.
You can, like, Angular's got a cache factory, I think it's called.
Yep, and I use that for the memory cache.
Okay.
I just don't use it for the disk or the NUC.
Okay, cool. Didn't want to disrupt you.
Yeah, you absolutely could build a right.
I'm just curious about that because I was like.
Yeah, no, and I'll show you the source code.
Similar, and I figure out the best practices. All right, cool.
One of the major helps for this is you only have to target Chromium, which as a web developer, as an Angular developer, it's really nice not have to worry about 7,000 rendering engines. The one caveat to that is if you're building for iOS, that is a implementation. So you're in kind of broken mobile Safari when you build applications. Chrome Cordova apps, and I haven't actually been able to try this. They actually bundle the Chromium rendering engine. So we've actually gotten to a point now where they're using Crosswalk, which is an Intel technology, to bundle the full Chromium stack in your application. So then what's nice about that, you don't need to worry about the user's version of Chromium. You can control it. You can control, okay, what bugs are there, what beta features do I want in the APIs, things like that. So that's very powerful from a developer perspective to be able to say, hey, no matter what Android device you're using, we know we can test for it. We make sure that works. Once your application is built, so let's say, okay, now I've built the coolest Angular application ever in my www folder. There's really kind of two ways to run it and play with it and try it. Obviously, you wouldn't wait to tools extensions, and you click on load on extension, and you just select your W in your browser, and then you can hit launch or in your launch tray or from the extension window, and that will pull up the background.js, which create and then supplies some dimensions. So you'll have a little dedicated window running on your desktop with your application. Or if you want to run on an emulator device, that's when you're going to be using the CCA build chain. You're going to CCA run Android. And what that will do is that will actually use Cordova, or it will update your configuration based on your manifests. Then we'll use Cordova to make sure the plugins are installed and then execute a build. Several open questions that I have, which this shows my kind of lack of experience. Load new assets on the fly. Sure, I could just use some standard JavaScript pre-caching, but I'm wondering if there's an Angular way. So if you guys have a way to do that. Animation performance. I have had terrible, terrible success with animation performance. Doing kind of just pure CSS transitions, and on mobile device, and even on the web, I was getting something like 12 frames per second. So if someone knows how to force, because from my understanding, basically, browser performance for GPU acceleration is a black art. So if anyone's mastered it here to know how to force a composite layer so that it can be transitioned easily, let me know. They actually just announced a new CSS property called will change, which should make that easier because then you can say, hey, the opacity of this element will change, which will then force it into its own GPU accelerated layer. But that's not there yet, so I'm excited for that. And then, I mean, I think I'm always open, or we should always be open to new UI UX frameworks when it's not being given to you by the platform. So, I mean, Ionic's exciting, Bootstrap has been around forever, but there's probably some new ones. I mean, we could build one in an hour that would probably be better than some of the things that are out there. So I think it's a big opportunity. All right, so that was really the content of the prepared section. Do you guys have questions? Are there any specific topics you want to get into, or do you want me to just pull up some source code for the network stack or anything like that?
I was going to maybe add this in the code.
Sure.
Like how do you go about putting tests around these things? Is it basically, can you do like standard browsing tests for just your Angular code and then
Yeah. So So at its heart, it's pure Angular, right? It is HTML, JavaScript, CSS running. So I mean, all your controllers, all your services, you can test those using your standard test runner. I'm not aware of a way to run any sort of Android or iOS stack issues.
So you just kind of throw it out there and see what will.
You throw it out there, and there's a very, very high probability it will work.
Well, that was a good yell.
Yeah. I mean, so they respond to bugs within about a day. I've been extremely impressed by this team. I mean, I was fortunate enough to have dinner with them out at Google I/O, and they're very passionate about this because they think, hey, let's empower developers to do something cool. Because it's hard to build mobile apps. I mean, are you guys mobile app developers? This is all okay. So this is a way of kind of taking the first step in that direction.
Are there things you have to watch out for though, like double click obviously on the HTML app that works perfectly fine, but when it compiles to mobile, it's still running HTML. I don't know if that's going to necessarily work the greatest.
How would you implement double click on the web? I mean, I would imagine that would work the same.
Well, because in like most web phone browsers on the web, you can't. Double click is Zoom on Chrome by default.
So one of the things they do is they set you up with the stock HTML they give you has a specified viewport without resize. The other thing, so I don't know if you've heard about this 300 millisecond delay.
Touch versus click.
Yeah, so one of the weird, terrible, dumb things they did when they built mobile browsers for the first time is they said, well, we don't know whether this is a touch or a click, so instead of trying to infer that, we're actually going to just wait. And so if they leave their thumb down for more than 300 milliseconds, which is 0.3 seconds, that's a lot of time, we're not going to do anything with that click yet. There is a JavaScript hack that you can do. So you just include this guy's 7,000 character whatever, and then it just goes away magically. And all of the new versions of the browsers, both Windows Phone, iOS, Android, they got rid of that. It's like, wow, that's dumb. We're sorry. Because I mean, an extra 0.3 seconds on every click really is going to make your app feel not performant. Yeah, so.
How do you compare this to PhoneGap?
So Cordova is maintained by the Apache project. PhoneGap is owned by Adobe. And so what they do is they take Cordova and they rewrite all the names of the libraries to PhoneGap. And then they have a very nice build server around it. So it's Cordova and PhoneGap are 99.9% the same thing. So what this does is this extends Cordova with a set of additional APIs and plugins that make it easy to suddenly run your application.
PhoneGap.
Good. So Chrome Cordova Apps from Google, which is an open source project, extends Cordova to enable those APIs. So it's using Cordova, which is the same thing as PhoneGap. So you could say it's using PhoneGap and extending it. It was funny, I logged a bug, or no, I responded to a bug post because I you know how you're writing code and then an error pops up and you Google it and you find someone else asking the same question. Mm-hmm. Well, fortunately, I actually figured out what the problem, or how to fix the problem, and then I posted back the answer. And then the guys are like, wait, this is the PhoneGap form, not the Cordova form. And I'm like, oh, sorry, it still works.
Did you make this app for MentorMate or for anything?
No, so that, basically to learn on the side. So just as a way of getting deep into this technology, I'm going to go build an application and launch it and see what happens.
Okay.
Is it out on the App Store? Can we find it?
It is.
What's it called?
So it's called OccamScan. I can pull it up too.
Yeah, I'd love to see it running and just want to see something like that. Oops.
So that's the URL. That's the name.
Just I'll tweet it out for anybody that's looking for something to click on versus something to type.
Sure.
So yeah, but then we'd have to type in your name.
So I actually saw that. I ran that from the launcher. And now, so it looks a little bit like a mobile phone, but it's got a different dimension. I can actually configure that. You can resize the window. And then if you use the mobile application. You can find it in the App Store, I'll just wander there. It's the exact same code base. So splash through there. It's the exact same code base. The differences are I use a shim. So, for example, camera access is different because they haven't implemented the get user media API yet. So I have to use the Cordova get a picture for me, as well as I've added so the performance characteristics are completely different. When you're on a desktop or a web browser, I'm going to get responses back in 100 milliseconds, whereas on mobile, I'm going to get responses back in 700 milliseconds or 2 seconds or 5 seconds. So I added things like a little progress bar and things like that. Let me pull up Sublime here. We'll see if I got any of the code. This isn't dangerous at all, just anything of any Sublime. All right, so you can see I've got my partials folder where I put all my HTML. I've got my index.html, my manifest.json, manifest.mobile.json. So this is really, you just define your Chrome app. So here's my name, here's my email address, here's my client ID. Well, don't take a picture of that.
You already did.
I am right now.
Yeah, we'll just get it from the web stream.
Yeah, basically, I mean, it's such a funny distribute an application with your key to access your API without giving away the key. You can obfuscate it as much as you want, but so lib is all the third-party tools I'm using. So you got Angular charts, Angular resource, Angular routing, and I've got my JS folder where I actually put my code. So here's my app.js file. So you're going to see a big long list of routes. So these are all the screens of my application.
Is there any modification stuff happening on this one at all?
I don't do any modification. So ADT, so the Android developer tools, will automatically compress things like images. They'll automatically minify code. So that's the tool set will actually do it, which then means Cordova will do it, which then means CCA will do it. So
you don't have to worry about it.
So there's some modification happening here. I would not be surprised if I looked in private disk on my Android phone if this code wasn't just sitting there. You absolutely could minify. It's not built on the CCA tool chain.
Oh, okay. So or gzip is not minified.
Yeah. So that's my app. So I mean, pretty simple. I mean, I have something like a screen like receipts. I have receipts new. Then receipts receipt ID.
You said you have different navigation. This is just a button, right?
Yeah. So what I do is if I pull up my index.html file here, you're going to see all my includes here. And then I've got my top nav controller. So this is, as I said, a little bit complicated by the fact that I can't load images by their source tag. So what I do is it's a little bit of a hack. So whether you want the profile icon or the settings icon, I just use ng-show, and I just hide different text and things like that to show different states. It's a little bit of a hack. And then down here, so there's the version if you actually have top bar text, and then it asks, do you have the plus icon to add something new? Do you have the save icon because some state has been marked dirty? And then here's my nice little comment. Removed June 8th because it's not performant. Hopefully I can add back cool transitions where every time you do a page click, it swaps it or something like that. I failed. And then I've got my ng view down here. One of the things in terms of developing for mobile that I ended up doing that once again, there's probably a better way of doing it. I've got height 100% all over my application because I want to use flex boxes to make sure things are nicely centered. And that's not yet easy in HTML. I mean, the way you do it is you make everything 100%, and then you make it a flex box. And then I overflow Y auto to get the scroll bar if it's too long. And then I think I said I'd show you the service for offline sync. So here's my offline sync tool. Just like I said, it's a service factor that returns the tool. I've got a blank all data, so it just starts blank. I've got several resources that I use, so these are just kind of, the web backend for its various pieces. I mean, I could compile them all into one. This is an artifact from the fact that I built them as separate services, and then you call each one as you needed it. It's got a refresh function, which activates the progress bar on the top. If it's successful, I get rid of that. If it fails, then I log there's no internet connection. Let's go get it from disk or memory. And then I just chain those. So you get the top level item, then you get the next level in the hierarchy. And then I do some additional processing because my web service returns things like M instead of male, F instead of female.
Do you have a long delay on that? I mean, on like a mobile, like, that's one kind of talking to, I think we're kind of the same. Like, it might be a while till it fails, right? So like,
no, so if you don't have an internet connection, it actually fails.
That's quick, but if it's like a crappy internet connection, then you have to sort of.
From what I've seen, it either succeeds slowly or fails quickly. Okay. I'm sure there are cases where it's not that way, but in almost all of my testing, that's how it works.
I've never done it. I just thought that maybe it'd be weird. It's cool.
And then I've got some kind of local, as you said, it's not a full cache pass-through, but be able to add some of that data locally in case, so that the state, I don't have to go back to the server to get it. And then I've got this idea of being able to queue certain things. So like a file upload, if it fails in real time, where I actually hook up to a UX to show this file upload progress, then I stuff it in a queue, and then it gets processed in the background, and then gets shows a notification to the user. That's just a way that I'm using to try and not interrupt the user if something has failed or something's taking too long.
What does it do?
Sure. So it's a platform where you scan. So if you go to the grocery store, you scan your receipts, with the idea being that you aggregate all of that data up into a single database, and then you can see, hey, my Target charges me 4% more on a Friday than a Saturday. I should go shopping on a Saturday.
Can you like run it in an emulator so we can just kind of see what it looks like?
That is it. Over here.
Oh yeah, because you can like run it as a Chrome app.
Yep, exactly.
You
can see it. So here's my user profile. So this used the token that it got from Chrome, so from my Google account, and then it called Google and said, hey, what's this person's email address? He said you could. And then it returns that back, and I store that in the database. And then let's click on receipts here. So if you go to testing, so I paid 54% too much for bananas, saved 8% on limes, paid 196 too much for vitamin water. It goes to the airport.
How do you scan the receipt? You like take a picture of it and it does some kind of OCR? Or?
No, it's manual.
Okay.
You take a picture of it and then monkeys process it.
And the monkey's you?
Yeah.
Monkey click.
Well, I mean, the idea is if it scales to any meaningful degree, which I don't expect it to, then you just hook it up to Mechanical Turk.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a Mechanical Turk?
Mm-hmm.
So you can automate people. It's an API for people.
It's Tesseract or something.
Sure.
What? Google's OCR, Tesseract.
Tried it, and Tesseract is not good enough. Okay, human beings suck with cameras. I don't know if anyone's tried to do computer vision before, but basically everyone is holding a baby and they're in like a pitch black room and they're shaking their phone. Yeah, no, we've done several projects as a company, MentorMate has. You can't trust users; they're bad. I mean, even if you show the little scanning, like hold it here to take a picture. I'm amazed that banks have that feature that you can scan.
Oh, yeah, my app that does that, like I have to take a picture of the back of the check like 1,000 times before it decides this is not just white. This is the back of a check.
My problem is always that I'm holding it, and then my camera focuses on the background.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah. It's like I have to be in a like broad sunlight with like a black book behind the check or something like that.
Isn't that what they recommend?
They want you to go to like a photography studio.
But turn on,
like position it.
Turn on your flashlight, put it on a dark surface, and you're done.
Quick get a patent on that.
I guess mine doesn't turn on the flash. Yeah, I don't know.
I turn on the flashlight and then go, yeah, but
Oh.
I think we're off topic.
Say abracadabra.
Mobile cameras.
Let's go back to the code, right? So any of the network stuff, did you implement your APIs as like promise-based APIs? Did you just
So,
let the Masonic update them?
because I use the network, that's actually why I do the network first. Because the network is going to return a promise. And what I can do is, even if the network fails and not updated it with here's some data to hold on to, and then the promise will eventually resolve as either failure, and then I don't do anything because I've already pre-populated with disk data, or I load it with the real data and the promise returns true. This does create a race situation, which I've run into because memory is always faster than network. I very easily could run into a race condition where it's like trying to override itself, but like you get your network data and then I update it from the memory. But the real world is
You'd probably be safe from that for a while.
yeah, give it 50 years. Although I mean, with the rise of like all these TV and play live or play on live or whatever, the network is becoming a viable option. Not to have local disk and local compute power. We're not there yet.
With third-party dependencies, manifest that JSON.
So when you mean third-party dependencies, you're talking about additional JavaScript libraries I'm using? Sure, let's take a look. So you need Angular. You don't need, wait, actually Angular requires jQuery, right?
No. It has its own implementation of basically jQuery Lite.
Okay.
Or it'll use your jQuery if you have.
So if you're doing like some crazy.
I'll probably remove that.
Check it out and see what happens.
Yeah.
Sure.
You may find that I've actually seen some implementation differences between jQuery Lite and so.
I'm not doing anything advanced outside of the context of Angular.
That would definitely gain some space right there.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, my biggest library here is D3. So I don't know if any of you use D3, so that it's a charting library, which is actually pretty cool. It's only with an insight. Ooh, yeah. It actually works just fine on mobile too, surprisingly. So they're doing something right that I'm not doing. Angular Charts, my app, my controller, my service, and then Google Analytics bundle. So CCA has created a bundle of Google Analytics that I use. You can use any of them because it's JavaScript and HTML. But this one complies with all the content security policy problems. I don't think it's 100% feature parity, but it's like 90% feature parity with the standard analytics library. So it's got send event and send error and things like that.
So wait, I'm sorry, I was just looking at D3, does it need Angular Charts to like together?
I don't remember. I think Angular Charts was someone's Angular implementation of D3, or a wrapper around D3, because I wanted to just update the state in an Angular methodology, and then have it handle the D3 interaction. So
Yeah, maybe it's like some chart interaction.
So that's what it is. Yeah. Show you. Show you the function. So
AC chart.
yeah. Sweet. So then I just go pass it a data structure in my controller, and then it just fills it and animates it for me.
Your analytics service goes through the Google Analytics, right?
Yeah.
Who's that?
Sure. I mean, I actually showed it to you in the presentation. I'll show you the
Wait,
full.
you showed where it's in routing.
So I created an analytics service with 3 lines of code. Yeah. Analytics.get service, service.get tracker, and return tracker. And then all I do is I do tracker.send view or send event. Yeah. I can never find. Do you guys have a search string for? There we go. Oops. Stop that. My Sublime is broken.
You're now back to send that.
Yeah, but I want to go to the second instance of that.
There's only one match.
What's that?
I'm just
That's all I do. So in my go-to function, I recommend.
And then send that view is just
Taking
a
notes.
function on Google Analytics.
Yep.
Okay.
And then I'm just passing it what looks like a web URL, because that's how I use my views. So then it just handles everything. That gives me real-time analytics. It's quite nice.
Then you can track your 3 users.
Yeah, 20.
20? That's cool.
And I made my own little go up function. The back button would ascend the hierarchy. Probably been implemented 1,000 times each.
Do you use it database storage or anything?
What's that? I don't do anything in a database. I just store it all in JSON structures.
Go back to your services and make your data goes back.
Yeah, so on the web service it's a database, but it's in this layer it's all just JSON.
Yeah, have you tried Tweemax or Tweenlight for your animation?
I have not.
I want to try it out.
Tweenmax?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me
Okay.
make that video.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else? Otherwise, I'm done. Is this interesting or useful?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Great.
Seems theoretically like you could use it and Ionic together, right?
Yeah, so Ionic is an Angular Cordova framework toolkit.
Yeah.
So with that, the only difference in this and Ionic is you don't get the Ionic UI tools, and with Ionic you don't get any of the Chrome APIs. So you can't run it as a Chrome app. You can't run it. Can't use the identity tools or the notification tools. Although Cordova has some of those things. So it has notification capabilities. It does not have the kind of built-in identity stuff.
So are they actually going to try to resolve the page, trying to use your anchor tags and stuff like that? That not?
I don't think they're. I mean, it's built into the security of the CSP that you can't switch pages, because then you could theoretically write something to disk and then force a user to load it, which they don't want to do. So I think you will always have to use some sort of JavaScript page switching mechanism, which is actually nice, because then you can do things like track it or monitor it, maybe build a custom breadcrumb, something like that, or do analytics. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Cool. Well, before everybody takes off, unless you want to just take off, we do give out cool shit at the end of all of these things. So, Tron.
You want to plug back in?
Yeah. So, don't.
I think we would have standardized by now, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to give you credit. That's last video. Coming up with the name for prize.
That was me?
I believe that was yours.
Good job.
It might have been, I don't know.
It's officially listed as.
Dude, congrats. Okay. Why isn't the share price? So yeah,
That's right. Enterprise prize.
The TV turned back on.
Oh, did it turn off?
Sleepy TV. Working hard.
It is 90 inches. I guess it would probably not want to be on indefinitely by accident. Now I just have to. Where do I find my API key, Dale?
There's a link there. Just click on that.
Okay. You're way ahead of me. Nobody copy my API.
You're not sharing it now.
Oh, it's all buzzed out anyway. Yeah. Okay, sweet. Okay. Grab our event. Okay, so wait, that's not it either. Oh.
There it is.
Okay, so Dale Lotz over here built this super awesome clicker for prizes, that stuff. And I pretended to help.
Did we do a source code audit?
No, I did not do a source code audit yet, although it is on GitHub. I think it's under the Angular event GitHub account.
It is.
Isn't it? Yeah.
How do we know you deployed that version?
I guess we'll just have to trust it. But we have a license to any JetBrains product to give away, which for those who are unfamiliar, JetBrains makes WebStorm, which is an excellent JavaScript IDE, as well as a bunch of other ones for Ruby and Python and Java and Groovy. And
Use IDEA, it's kind of
yeah, IntelliJ IDEA is kind of their flagship product, and it has all those features of WebStorm plus a bunch of other cool stuff. We also have a 1-year sub to frontendmasters.com, which one of our members, Mark Grabansky, runs. It's a great training site with a bunch of videos and stuff. And 1 month subscription to Pluralsight, which also has a ton of videos. John, would you go get the cards for those?
Absolutely.
I guess we just need one. But. So we're going to just pick people. You get your pick of whatever those you want, and then whoever picks first will have the most pick. Afterwards, you get what's left. So here we go.
JetBrains.
John is going to get JetBrains license. So good for you, John.
I didn't have to think about it at all.
Think about Kicker algorithm.
Are you using Angular agility in your
Okay, so
It's supposed to pick me in the first 3.
John wants, what do you want, John? IntelliJ? Or what?
yeah, well, I'll think it does IntelliJ.
Yeah, it's most of their products are available in the picker I get. There's some C# extensions for Visual Studio. There's RubyMine, I think Python, whatever their Python one is called, whatever their Objective-C one is called.
Let me think about it.
I'll email you the list.
Okay, yeah. Version I just bought ReSharper, which is hard.
Yeah, I think that's one of the picks. Okay,
so we're turning up.
Next winner is Christian. Are you here, Christian? Uh-oh.
Broke the
Shame.
rule.
For shame.
We should always post.
Randall.
I'll do Pluralsight.
Okay.
Here you go. Thank you. Yeah.
And Marie. Where's Marie? Did you already win a Frontend Master subscription? No? Okay, sweet. I will send you that thing. Anything else anybody wants to talk about before we head out? And a little early on the holiday week. I'm impressed this many people came. Cool. Okay, well, feel free to mingle a little bit, but otherwise, we'll see you next month. Maybe Zach and I will talk. All right.
Yeah. So you Oh, PHP. I think I see
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
PHP, Minnesota, maybe?
Yeah, a little bit of
Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I go over there.
Okay, so just go to the, they have a set Saturday.
Oh, yeah, the things is very. Yeah, I don't go to that one. Yeah, I go to the monthly one, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, man. Yeah, I'm voting if you want to come, go there on Saturday when it's St. Paul.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was a little happier than the sun.
Yeah,
I've been for over a year now, so you guys are, yeah, I don't get distracted by it.
Is it on?
Yeah, it's all until 9, so
It was like the so
Yeah, it's in the fridge, so okay.
I just didn't want to go in the fridge and grab it because it wasn't.
No, the Coke.
I took her some happy hours. So